Why don't you explain to us briefly, and then I can ask some follow-up questions on what we're really interested in is to what purpose is this consolidation being done, and what were the quote-unquote problems, small p, that you and the governor saw which drove why this had to be done?
Well, we used to have four different boards, in the sense of boards of directors. We call them board of trustees or board of governors for higher education. We had one board for the four Connecticut State University campuses.
Which would be Eastern, Western, Central, Southern, right?
And a system office on Woodland Street in Hartford. We had a board of trustees for the 12 community colleges and a system office on Woodland Street in Hartford. We had a board of governors for higher education, which gave the direction to the Department of Higher Education, which did a collection of issues, which is where I was commissioner for 3 years, also on Woodland Street in Hartford. And we had a separate board that was called the Board of State Academic Awards for Charter Oak State College.
Which is the
distance learning college for the public system in Connecticut. It's headquartered in New Britain. And so we had four boards, three different, if you will, system or central offices. And our belief was there's really two components to this.
Okay.
One is that, like other states, it's no, earth-shaking idea to bring four-year institutions and two-year institutions and public systems under one board. That's the way the CUNY system is in the state of New York.
so this is not an original model?
No, Wisconsin, Georgia, Minnesota, et cetera. Many states have two-year and four-year institutions under combined government. It's all over the lot across the 50 states, okay? We thought in a state this size that we could save and will save some money by coordinating this and not having three chief financial officers, three chief information officers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That there would be some money that would be saved in this, but much more importantly was the idea that these institutions, which in many ways serve the same, largely defined, same group of students across the state and across generations in time, that are the largest group of high school graduates from our public high schools going on to any kind of college, and they're also the core of the state's workforce and adult population who have a college degree. That there was so much cross-movement by students and other things that some sort of unified governance would not only save money, but probably would decrease barriers to cooperation.
Barriers to cooperation between
community colleges and state university campuses. For example, we've looked extensively, as we will with every future high school graduating class. We've now, for the first time in Connecticut's history, been able to take a single high school graduating class, statewide, class of 2004, and look at what happened to those students in higher education, whether they went to public, private, in-state, out-of-state, community college, CSU, anywhere, and see what happened over the 6 years from, say, being 18 years old to being in your mid-20s. And what we found was that almost half of those students who went to CSU were also going to community colleges sometime during those years. So there's a lot of crossover across campuses. It's a national phenomenon. The education people call it mobility. There's more student mobility than there ever was in the past. And it's not just in the traditional path of I transfer. I leave your institution, I leave Tunxus Community College, and I come to Central Connecticut State University. Nice bright line, I go over it, and that's it. That's still a part of that mobility, but most of the students moving across campuses are doing it not in a formal transfer situation. They're putting together courses based on availability, convenience to their own schedules. Of course, many of these students are not living on campus. They're not your traditional, college student model of living in the dorm. Some in the dorms at Central might take a course at Tunxus as well. So we're trying to have a system that recognizes student needs and where students want to go and make it work better together. Because there was one moment that kind of crystallized this when the new system was in place and we had the first meeting of the 17 campus presidents. When one of the president of the largest Connecticut State University campus and the president of the largest community college campus that are within a 20-minute drive of each other.
Met each other for the first time.
Absolutely.
Why did I know you were going to say that?
Yeah, and neither one were rookies to the state of Connecticut. They'd all been here. The two of them have been here at least 4 years.
Yeah.
And they weren't the only ones in the room. But for me, I knew everyone in that room. and had worked with everyone in that room for a number of years, you know, and it was amazing to me how many had
So
not.
I think it would be safe to sum up, Mike, that there are some financial benefits to this. You're indicating that there's probably a more optimized and efficient government structure.
Right.
There's got to be some operational efficiency that flows down that way. And I was really happy to hear you say that there's something more at stake here than just saving money, because when I looked at the numbers in terms of the savings over the next year or two, they're really minuscule when you compare it to the size of the whole organization. I mean, it's a very, very low percentage. I think what happens sometimes when these kinds of things happen, Mike, is that people get the idea that, hey, the real reason they did this was to eliminate 24 positions out of about 200, and we're going to save millions and millions and millions of dollars through the consolidation. And you're essentially saying we're going to save some over time, but there's more important things that are going to happen here. And it's this integration of the higher education network.
Absolutely. And you sort of have to understand that this reorganization proposal was launched in the middle of a legislative session that was focused on one of the state's biggest financial crises in 20 years. And so obviously in that kind of environment, discussions around savings takes on all this added amplification, okay?
Sure.
And to some extent, the substantive education mission, the substantive student success issues, the substantive workforce development issues, kind of got pushed to the side because everyone was thinking budget, 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 and that's dollars, dollars, dollars.
Mike, this, as you know, this show is shown not only throughout Connecticut, but it's also picked up because we're doing it at Central Connecticut campus. It's shown daily on campus. I mean, at a very, very pragmatic level, everything that we're talking about is really transparent to the students, but let me ask you the question directly. For the students here at Central and all of the other colleges and universities that are now part of this, not the Central consolidation, because they're still going to be remaining alone. Is there any direct effect on the students?
No, I talked to students, I talked to many faculty and staff during the last 9 months as this was under debate. And I would say to people, if you think this will affect you individually now, just this reorganization itself, then I would ask you this: have you ever dealt with the offices on Woodland Street? Did you ever go to the system office? Did you ever talk to the system office? Did you ever? And the answer for the overwhelming majority of people is no. No. The lives on the campuses are shaped by the people on the campuses, and they're going to remain who they are, and all that sort of thing. What we're hoping, though, obviously, is not merely as a result of the reorganization, but as a result of a less obstacle-ridden governance structure, that we will be able to make smart decisions with people's involvement to help make them smart decisions, but then can lead to results that benefit students with less barriers to achieving those results. And so over time, yes, we think the reorganization will be beneficial, but again, as it benefits students, if it's a better transfer process for them, they're not going to sit there going, oh, well, yes, those people on Woodland Street in Hartford had something to do, because they're still going to be dealing with the faculty or the registrar or whatever at Central or Tunxus or whatever.
Mike, just to make it clear, I mean, for myself coming from primarily the private sector, although I've done a lot of work in the public sector, and on the private sector part of me, I've done a lot of merger and acquisition work. Essentially what this is this consolidation and restructuring isn't analogous to merger and acquisition, but from a cultural point of view, there's going to be some cultural shock that's going to flow from this. Certainly at this level, Mike, and there's going to be some flow down of the cultural shock at the level below that because of what you've done. So the cultural integration, this a major challenge, you think?
Well, any change agenda involving human beings, and that's everything we do, has some cultural issues a part of it. For those people who are familiar, and I spent a long time in the private sector in Connecticut in the 70s, 80s, and into the mid-90s, is the best analogy to what's happened here is you used to have an environment in which you had a couple of holding companies. The system offices were like holding companies, in the same way that there are some holding companies that no one's ever heard of, but they own big name, retail brands, Titleist golf balls or whatever, owned by some holding company. This is in a sense the three holding companies on Woodland Street, Hartford, coming together into one unified structure. There's 200 people total in those three holding companies, if you will. There's many thousands and thousands, tens of thousands more, students, faculty, whatever, at the campuses, and nothing like that is happening, at the campus level.